Hello my friends, thank you for joining me for the final episode of the Mache Taxidermy Series. So today I'm going to be teaching you how to add those final layers. We've already added the joint compound layer. Now the next layer is going to be a paper mache mixture with book page strips laid over the top of your joint compound. I'll also be teaching you how to finish this project by spraying it with a gloss sealer, and we are going to talk about how you'll turn it in. So let's get started. Before we can add our paper mache layer, it's very important that we take the time to sand down the joint compound. This is done by just taking an old rag, dipping it in some water, and you can have a container next to you to make this process easier. You'll dip it, wring it out, and continue pressing down with your towel across those areas that are raised from your joint compound to make it as smooth as possible. It's also really important to make sure that you're only doing this step once the joint compound has had a little bit of time to dry. If you try to do it while it's still really wet, then it's definitely going to just smear it around rather than sanding it down to be smooth. Once your joint compound is dry and sanded, you can start on your paper mache layers. To begin, we're going to take pages from books and tear them into strips, and you need a lot. Make it rain! Once you've prepared enough strips, you're going to start creating the mixture of paper mache, which is half flour and half water. I just used one of those little bathroom cups to measure. Then I used my hands to mix it rather than any other utensil to make sure that I can squish out all of the little clumps of flour. Then you'll dip your first strip into your mixture. You'll take it out and squeeze off the excess mixture with 2 fingers. Then you'll flip your strip upside down and do the same thing, going the other direction. Once you've removed as much of the excess liquid as possible, you'll place your strip onto your animal and smooth it up against the form. Taking the time to correctly remove all of the excess liquid is a very important part of this project. If you leave a lot of that excess liquid, you'll have an extra thick layer of flour, which is what that white part of the mixture is. So if you have excess flour, sometimes it will show up and cover your piece and make it smell worse and also look a little clumpy. I recommend even using a paper towel to try and remove any excess flour as soon as you put your strips on. If you wait, it will get a little soggy as you try to remove the flour, and you might actually tear your book pages. I would definitely recommend starting with the neck, and then you'll just continue covering it until you are finished with that area. Once you finish adding the final layers to your neck, you can move on to your attachments, which would be the ears, antlers, teeth, anything that's extended off of your animal. Try to make sure that you're covering every single part of your animal so that you have book pages all the way around and you don't have any extra pieces of white from that joint compound or any foil showing through. Don't forget to add some strips right up against the base of any of your attachments, because that's what's going to anchor it on to your animal's head once it's dry. When you're working on adding your strips over the top of something that is foil or something that is just elongated that tapers, it is really difficult to make the paper mache wrap around and get skinnier without having gaps in your strips. So I would recommend tearing really skinny pieces and then just wrapping it around and just having it straight across just in that one section, and then you can tear another piece and wrap it around up above it so that you can slowly start to taper these pieces. Keep in mind that when you are wrapping the newspaper or the book pages around these pieces, it won't stick to the foil. So you have to actually wrap it around and make sure that the pieces are long enough that they'll reach the other end of their piece so that they can wrap around and hold on to itself. If you don't have the ability to get it all the way across, you might need to add another strip because it will not attach just to the foil. It only sticks to itself. Once you've added the mache to all of your attachments, including foil and railroad board, we're going to flip your project over and start working on the back. You'll end up adding your strips all the way across that flat surface where it's going up against the wall, and once that's finished, you're going to do the back of your head and the back of your ears and all of your attachments. This is a really important step because this is part of what will mount those attachments to your head. So if this part isn't secure, it might not stay. It's important to make sure you add your paper mache to all of your attachments first and leave your face for last. We want the face to look the nicest out of all of our areas, and we don't want any of the paper overlapping into that space, so that's why we are saving our face for last. We'll begin the face by starting on the eye that you created with your paper and that masking tape. You want to cover it all the way and make sure that your paper mache book pages go all the way back into that eye socket. Once you've done that, you're going to slowly start filling that sunken eye socket with those book pages so that you don't see any of that joint compound left showing through. Then you're going to add a strip of paper going over the top of your eye, and this is going to give the appearance of an eyelid. Once you've finished both of your eyes, you can start moving on to the face surrounding the eyes. So we're going to start adding strips to the jaw, the cheeks, and we're working our way towards the nose. As you're doing this, you should be considering which direction your text is going in. I would recommend either having all of your text going in the same direction and making it fairly organized that way, or having a good mixture of different directions so that it doesn't just have a couple of different spots where it looks like it's poor planning. I chose to be very intentional about the direction that the text was going in to make it look a little bit more organized and neat. I had my text leading all the way up to my nose, and once I got there, I made sure that I had a really nice flat edge on my next strip so that I could squeeze it into that opening in between my nose and the mouth so that that whole area was covered. I made sure to press along that edge because we don't want it to lift up after. Once I did that, I continued working on the top of my nose, did the same step where I found a flat piece of paper and I just laid it across that top. Now, as you're doing the actual nose part, it's really important to make sure that you're pressing in and making sure those nostrils that you created still show once you've got the paper added on top. I also chose to change the direction of the text on the nose, and I did that so that that would be the central focal point because all of the text is leading back to that one place. When I added this last strip on the top of my nose, I made sure to really press into the nostrils and make sure that it was still visible, that you could see that hollow space. And that's the last step for the paper mache layer. So you need to wait for this to dry all the way before you can move on to the next step. But we've only got one thing left, and that's adding a sealant all the way around to make sure that the flower isn't exposed and that it's a nice shiny finish. I have a specific spot that I would like you to complete this next step in. So once your project is completely dry and you're ready for this next step, this is where I would like for you to go. Take a right at the stairs, take a left once you get downstairs, head outside towards the teacher's parking lot, and head outside to spray your project. To begin adding the sealant, make sure that you have the Mod Podge High Gloss can. You're going to shake it for 30 seconds to a minute, and when you're ready, you're going to spray it directly onto your project. Make sure you're only doing this in the grass area off to the side, because if you do this on top of concrete, it's going to leave a little silhouette of where your animal was after you're done spraying it. So you'll spray it and make sure that you aren't spraying too close with your nozzle, and you want to be about 6 inches away. You also want to get a very even layer over the top, and you do not need to spray the back of your project. Once you're back in the classroom, you're going to complete one last quick step, which is adding the holes that this piece will hang from. I would recommend marking them first to make sure that they are nice and even so your project will hang straight. Then you're going to take an X-Acto knife and you're just going to make sure that blade is nice and tight, and you're going to just slide it in going one direction and then just switch it and go the other direction so that you're making 2 small squares when you're cutting these out. Please keep in mind that X-Acto knives are very sharp and very dangerous, so make sure your other hand is far away from where you're cutting while you're doing it so there's no chance of you accidentally cutting yourself. Once you've cut those holes, you're going to need to pull out some of that stuffing and paper from the back, so make sure that you clear those holes so that when it hangs on the wall, the nail will have a place to go. To turn in your project, you need to bring it over to the photo station in class. You need to set it up so that it can stand on its own on top of one of these little book stands, and you need to take a couple of different photos. First, I want you to be paying attention to the side of this edge of the background and making sure that that black strip does not show up in your photo. So you should be framing it so that you only see the background and your animal. You need to take a couple of different photos. So the first one will be zoomed out so you can see the whole thing. You need another that's showing a couple of close-up details. And you also need to have one that's a little bit off to the side while still not showing too much of the actual background. So once you have taken your photos, you'll submit them via Teams through the assignment, and then you will be finished with this project and you can take it home. Thank you so much for joining me for this entire series. I hope that you learned a lot throughout this project, and I hope that you also felt a sense of pride, because these mounted animals are something that people go out and buy from stores all the time. You can find them in Target, in Walmart, and that's the easy thing to do, is to go out and buy something when you want it. But I think it's really cool that you took the time to think about what you would like to make for this project and then made it for free. You made this out of paper and flour and water and some joint compound that's used for drywalling. So that's pretty impressive, and you should feel really proud of yourself that you did that. You made something awesome, and I think that's great. So good job, and I'm excited to see you for our next series. Thanks for watching.